Hello everyone, I'm Joshua Lee and another truck video. So as you all know, I like reviewing cars and like talking about cars. And if you're in the market for a pickup truck today, I know that buying a pickup truck can be a very complicated decision. There's so many people who believe in Ford, so many people who believe in Chevy, so many people who believe in GMC, so many people who believe in Ram. Which truck do you buy? Now, I currently own a 2017 Ford F-150. It has a 3.5 with a 10-speed in it. It was like one of the very early ones that was the 3.5 coupled with the 10-speed. And it's been a great truck. I've had a few issues with it. It had the sunroof, moonroof on it broke, and there's a recall where they have strengthened pieces. There's like little bracket channels that the moonroof slides in. I think the original ones were pretty thin. They have strengthened them now, and so I don't think it was a recall, but it was like a TSB, and they put the revamped um, sliders in there, and I haven't had any more problems with that. I've also had a leaky oil pan. I had it repaired at Athens Ford, and they didn't do a great job. They had to redo it, and still didn't do it, so I had to take it to um, I took it to Jim Ellis, and then they fixed it. I haven't had any more problems with that. That's really been the only two problems I've had with the 3.5. I've heard that I've got this new TSB in the mail, though, saying that there's cam phasers that can start knocking. And so when I bought the 3.5, it was touted as being one of the most reliable engines out there. So that's why I got it. Now all of a sudden I get this cam phaser problem. I'm not experiencing any cam phaser problems. I have 42,000 miles on this truck. I did buy the extended warranty up to 70,000 miles. I think in February is the end of this campaign where you're supposed to go get the truck reflashed and reprogrammed so that theoretically it pushes more oil up to the cam phasers. I don't know what's going on with all that. I don't know. I'm tempted to trade the truck in. So I just wanted to run down this really quick. So I think when you start talking about truck wars, why do so many people believe in GM? Why do so many people believe in Ford? What exactly is happening? And here's the thing: it's not like Ford is better than GM, or GM is better than Chevrolet, or Chevrolet is better than Ram, or Ram's better than Ford. It's not really like that. And this is really not this way with any car at all. Really, Ford was the best truck in a particular year with a particular configuration, with a particular motor. And then Chevy, during a particular time, was the best truck in this year at this particular time with this particular configuration, with this particular motor, but don't get four-wheel drive or something like that. And then Ram is the best truck this particular year with this particular motor if you get four-wheel drive or something like that. So that's how it is. And I'm just going to try to run through these really, really quickly. Don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I'm going to go down to probably the worst truck ever produced. That was the 6.0 Ford from 2000, like middle of 2003 up to 2006. They made a 4.0, the 6.0, I'm sorry, the 6.0 liter diesel engine was produced by Navistar. It is probably the worst diesel engine of all time put in a mainstream vehicle. And it was just, I had a 2004. Mine really didn't give me any problems. I had it up to 65,000 miles. I noticed it started kind of like idling up and down. I had it reprogrammed. That was mostly fixed. I really didn't have any problems with mine, but the truck was not. I know some people who still drive those even today, but I don't know of a single person who has had problems with that particular truck. So that was like hands down the worst diesel engine ever produced. And then right behind it was the 6.4. It came out right after the 6.0 from 2007-ish, somewhere in there, up to 2009. They made this 6.4, and they made some improvements to the 6.0, but I think this is when the first time when you start hearing the cab off repair procedures. You have to literally pull the whole cab off just to get to the turbo and a variety of other things. It was just terrible. A lot of problems of the 6.0 carried right on over to his 6.4. It's just probably the second worst diesel engine ever produced. From there, most diesel engines are actually pretty good. Duramax diesels have had problems with head gaskets blowing, cracked heads because they have an aluminum block, aluminum head. I don't know why they won't just go and put a cast iron block in there. Come on, people. 100 more pounds, not going to make a difference on a diesel truck. I have no idea why they're so concerned with weight on these diesel trucks. Just put a heavy block in there. That's what the 7.3 did, which, speaking of the 7.3, probably the best diesel engine in a mainstream pickup truck of all time. I know plenty of people who have 7.3s 800,000 miles, 900,000 miles, 500,000 miles, and they didn't baby them. Like, these were work trucks. They were run by employees who didn't care anything, didn't always change the oil or whatever. So the 7.3 was the probably best engine ever produced in a mainstream vehicle. We had the 12 valve Cummins, was also a really, really great engine. Plenty of people got 400, 500,000 miles. Also the 24 valve Cummins, great, great, great engine. Probably the only problem I heard of those is the lift pump. I put a fast lift pump. It's called Fast, F-A-S-T. I think it actually has 2 S's in it. It's just called Fast Pump. That was the name brand of it. This was a revamped pump that brought fuel from the fuel tank to the fuel injector. For some reason, I think they had some bad fuel injectors, and the fuel injector would go bad, and it send metal through the engine, cause a lot of problems. So the engine itself, phenomenal engine. The fuel system, not so great. But if you upgraded those components, the 12 valve and the 24 valve Cummins, probably right behind the 7.3 when it comes to reliability. Right now, if you want to talk about contemporary motors, I know I just now mentioned Ford and Ram, GM. Duramax diesel has always had steady reliability. I don't think there was a particular year where Duramax was just awful, and there's not a year where Duramax diesels are just the best. I haven't seen anybody with a Duramax getting up to 800,000, 900,000 miles. Maybe there is somebody. They seem to be like a middle-end type of engine. Most people, they're good for 300,000 or 400,000 miles. It's pretty much a good engine. The Duramax diesel has mostly been a good engine, but there's been some years where they had problems, and I think today Duramax diesels are really having, not really engine problems, but DEF problems. They're having lint problems. Most of it's all related to the exhaust system, pretty much all the problems I know with the Duramax diesel is related to either the DEF system or the emission system. That's what I was trying to think of. Just the tailpipe emissions, catalytic converter. There's some type of problem that's going into limp mode. There's an emission problem going wrong with it. So anyway, if we talk about contemporary Ford vehicles today, Ford is really using, and if you talk about the 150, you're going to be talking about, they use a 3.3 liter. I'm not sure they're using a 3.3 liter in 2022 right now. It seemed like I heard that they may be discontinuing that. But there was a 3.3 liter naturally aspirated engine that was in like the lowest end trucks. Really hard to get. The next engine from that was a 2.7. Now 2.7, I have a lot of good to say about 2.7. It's a great, great engine. Very small displacement. I don't like how small the displacement is. But this engine puts together pretty much combines all of the most advanced technology in the world. It's a dual scroll, I think it's a dual scroll turbocharger that it doesn't have exhaust manifolds on it. The turbo is almost like bolted right up to the engine, so it has there's not a lot of distance between the actual combustion and the turbo, so this really reduces turbo lag. It has both dual injectors, like it has port injection and it has direct injection. That helps keeps your valves clean, keep carbon buildup from getting on there. And then has all the auto stop technology. It produces a lot of power. I think for 2021, if I remember the numbers right, it's 425 foot-pounds, something like that, if I remember it right. Is it 500, 400? Somewhere in there. It's got a lot of power, and it works great in the Ford F-150 as long as you're not towing more than like 8,000 pounds, which most people are not. So, and then from there, you go from the 3.5, same engine I got. But we got cam phaser issues. So I'm like, what in the world? And I really worry about these cam phaser issues in like Power Boost Hybrid, because really the problem you're having with the cam phasers is lack of oil getting up there. It may be because the tolerance in there is really tight. Oil is able to get everywhere else, not quite able to get up where the cam rollers are. I don't know. It's just my theory. I think they've made some modifications, but I do worry about getting a new Power Boost Hybrid because I would have cam phaser issues. That's kind of what I worry about. And then 5.0. Now the 5.0 Coyote V8, a lot of people are like, I'm not into turbos. I don't want all that. They would get the 5.0 just to escape all those kind of problems right there. Man, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so the 5.0, I know a guy's got a 5.0. He's got 280 something thousand miles, and this guy trashes everything. Like, he brings me his equipment, all of his equipment is always tore up. I have a Honda MUV 700, big red, so side-by-side utility car. This thing's just trash. Like, he tears everything up. That's a great utility car. He just tears it up. He leaves it out in the rain. His four-wheeler looks like garbage. His truck's got 100 dents all on it. He has that 5.0 Coyote. He pulls heavy bobcats with it. He's way over the towing capacity of that truck. He goes from Georgia to Alabama. Like, he just loads miles on his trucks. He has not been able to destroy that 5.0 yet. It's been a great truck. So I know that 5.0 is good because it has held up under the kind of abuse he's got. He has a 2014 or 15. And those were the good years. So if you get a 5.0 Coyote from 2015 to 2017, probably was the best year for that 5.0 Coyote. It's a naturally aspirated V8, nothing wrong with it. For some reason, I think when we went to 2018 up to 2019, I have to go back and check my notes. I don't remember everything. Something about the way they cast the sleeve. I don't know what it is. I have to go back and look to see exactly what it is. Something about the way the sleeve is cast. Just check that. It causes it to burn oil. And maybe not everyone burn oil, but it burns an excessive amount of oil for some people. And Ford started saying that was normal. It was just a big mess right there. And then I think around about 2018 or 2019, they started putting plastic oil pans on there. I'm like, come on. Why? I don't get that. Pick up a metal oil pan, then pick up a plastic oil pan. We're talking a few differences of ounces in weight. Why are they so concerned with putting plastic oil pans on vehicles? I just don't understand. Just put a metal oil pan on there. And then you wind up with a plastic drain screw that you just break off or twist off. I just don't understand this. I hate plastic oil pans. They're just terrible. So anyway, in 2021, Ford introduced cylinder deactivation on the 5.0. So not only did we put a plastic oil pan on there, and then we changed something with the cylinder sleeve that makes it where it's possible that it can burn oil. We also go to cylinder deactivation. I think Honda calls it VCM. Chevrolet calls it something else. Chevy has had it a long time. Ram has also had it. It's been very problematic, particularly for GMs and even for Rams. Now Ford, I think they can pull a rabbit out of a hat and create a reliable VCM. I just don't understand it. It doesn't even get better gas mileage with VCM. Some people will say it does, but it doesn't. It's just nonsense. That was the whole reason we got the 5.0, just because it was a simple, naturally aspirated engine. Now all of a sudden it has gotten so complicated. I can't necessarily say I recommend it now. I don't understand what Ford is doing. So, but if you go to a 250, so that's for 150. If you go to a Ford F250, you're able to get this 6.2 liter, which has been a phenomenal engine. The 6.2 liter is just a great engine, particularly when it's coupled with that 6-speed transmission. You're going to get 400,000 miles on that engine. 400, 500 easily. That engine is great. Doesn't produce a lot of power. It's kind of a bummer it doesn't. If you want a little bit more power, you can jump up to what Ford calls the 7.3 liter Godzilla engine. I'm really excited what they're doing there. I think the same thing they did with the Godzilla 7.3 liter that has come out for 2021 for the Ford F250. They should have did the same thing for the 5.0 Coyote. I don't understand this segmented thinking. Like, you know what people want. You knew people wanted a naturally aspirated, reliable V8s, old school technology, push rod technology. So that's what the 7.3 gas burner is supposed to be. It's just a naturally aspirated, simple engine that you can put your employees in. They may not religiously change the oil. They may not pay attention to what they're doing. It doesn't have just gargantuan torque or horsepower that they can do donuts in, spin out in. And so I think 7.3, particularly coupled with the fact that it comes with the 10-speed transmission, I think it's a great idea. So if I was going to get a Ford F250, I would strongly look at the 7.3. Now you can go, and when I say 7.3, it's kind of confusing. Sometimes I wonder whether the nomenclature was based off the old 7.3 that was produced from, I think, 1999 to 2002. That was the best engine ever produced, and it had a name. Everybody's like, oh, that's the 7.3. It had a very distinct sound. So anyway, we come back with a 7.3 in 2021. It's a gas burner. I think it's an awesome engine based on what I've heard. I don't have any experience with it personally myself. And then we moved to the 6.7. Now the 6.7, I had a 6.7. It was in a 2014. It was like the extended cab version. It was a beautiful maroon colored truck. I drove all the way up to Paris, Kentucky to buy this truck. I got it for a phenomenal deal. I bought it for $34,000. I'm sorry, I bought it for $36,000. Turned around, sold for $34,000 after I put about 30,000 miles on it. It was a great, great engine. I love the 6.7. 6.7 is just, Ford had all these problems with the 6.0, had all these problems with the 6.4. Then they were like, you know what? We're going to produce our own engine. We're done with Navistar. They dumped Navistar. They produced their own in-house engine. Came up with the 6.7. 6.7, as far as I've heard, has been nothing but good news for Ford. It's been a great engine. The only thing I've heard bad about, well, I've heard two things bad about 6.7. So if you go to a 550 6.7, it uses a different turbocharger than the 250 and the 350s, and it has some problems with those early cab and chassis trucks with the turbocharger. It may be in the DEF fluid, I don't know. And then also I've heard that the 6.7 has plastic finger rollers in it, or something is plastic in the engine. I don't know. I heard somebody complain about that, but I haven't really heard any problems with that. And then probably the third thing I heard, I said I heard two things, but it's actually three. The other one is extended idling. So I have a buddy of mine, he has a construction job in Alabama. They have tons of 6.7s, like 24 of them in a fleet. And these trucks just sit out on the job site, just idling and idling and idling and idling and idling. And I don't know whether Duramax is really prone to this. I don't know how to ram spores in this area, but allowing a 6.7 to just idle and never properly warm up builds up carbon. You start getting some degradation and detonation. There's problems that come in, and I think the DEF fluid gets clogged, the DEF system gets clogged up, and there's some problems. You have to take it in and get it done. So it's really a truck that you need to get in, drive, load it up. You know, if you do some extended idling, make sure you also get in it, drive it, and burn it out. And I've heard the Duramax also have that same problem. Actually, now that I think about it, a buddy of mine, he works out of his truck. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold. He's just sitting in his truck, writing, taking phone calls. His truck's just idling. He didn't care about how much gas he burned during idle. He started getting these kind of problems. His truck went into limp mode. So Duramax diesel. It was a 2000, I think it's a 2014 that he has. So he had problems with the Duramax diesel too, with extended idling. So that's something you got to watch with the 6.7. But other than that, I've heard nothing but good things with the 6.7. It has over 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. It has power like you would not believe, and the gas mileage is not that bad on it. I think it's just about, when I had mine, I got about 18 miles to the gallon. I think the new ones are supposed to get about 19. Not great. Gas is a little bit more expensive than, diesel's a little bit more expensive than gas. So, you know, if you need that gargantuan power, if you're pulling bobcats, excavators, that kind of thing, you definitely need to get the 6.7. If you're not pulling super heavy loads, I think the 7.3 Godzilla is rated up to about, somebody's going to come in the comments and be like, oh, you don't have your numbers right. I think 7.3 is rated at about 14,000 pounds, somewhere in there, 15,000, 16,000, somewhere in there. If you're going over that, you need to go with the 6.7. So anyway, I will say this personally. I don't believe you should probably pull no more than about 12,000 pounds with the 7.3. That's just me. The 7.3 Godzilla. That's just my idea of it. So anyway, let's start with Chevy a little bit. I don't know quite as much about Chevy. I've never owned a Chevy product, so that's just me. I never owned a Chevy product, so this is just what I hear. Can't tell you much about it. Chevy used this 5.3 liter engine that's in a whole range of vehicles. Man, it's a mixed bag with that. What I have heard for like 2021, I think someone told me this, that they were sourcing the valve springs from some supplier, and there was an inconsistent development of the metal. And so some of the metal had pockets in it. This is very springy metal. That's how it's supposed to be. In order to have really springy metal that's consistently springy, millions and millions of times, you got to have structural integrity in the metal. And so the structural integrity of these springs was not really great. You could spring them, compress them, release them, compress them, release them so many thousands of times, and then they break. This is an interference engine, so when the valve springs break, it allows the valve to drop down. When the piston comes up, it hits the valve, it can bend the valve, it can mess up the piston. You have a ruined top end job. So you got to do a top end job on the truck, many thousands of dollars. Bad news for GM owners, Chevy owners with that 5.3. And I think they And then they realized that. They were like, okay, some of these valve springs are bad. Somewhere on the assembly line, they stopped the assembly line. They threw all those valve springs away. Let's get some new valve springs. So if you buy very late 2021, 2022 GM, you may be out of the woods for that problem. I don't know. But GMs have always dropped lifters. I don't know exactly. I haven't heard of that happening really with any of these other vehicles, but some of the GMs, including even the 6.2s on the GMs, would drop the lifter. You have a valve interference problem. And so, I don't know. And then they've always had problems with this ticking. My brother even had one. I think it's probably like a 2005 or something like that. 2006. You get this ticking noise, like when the truck is idle, it's going tick, 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 tick. And that just scares people. People are like, oh, my motor's ticking, my motor's about to blow up, So, I don't even know what all that was about. It's hit and miss. Like, I know some GMs that have 300,000 miles, and then I know people whose GMs broke at 20,000 miles. Like, it's a mixed bag with GM. I think the primary problems we have in today with GM, when it comes to engine technology, I'm just going to say GM is way behind. Just way behind. I drove a brand new 2020 GM truck. It had the huge it had a 6.2 liter in it, by the way. It had nowhere near the power that the 3.5 had. It was sluggish. I had to step on it. It would not get up and go. The fuel economy was horrible. I will say one thing, though. That truck was planted. The steering was tight. To me, it drove way better than my 2017 Ford drives. Now, a 2021 Ford and above may drive a little better, but I have a 2017 Ford. It's a great truck, has the FX4 package, but it's bumpy. It's just bumpy. It's just up and down like this. I drove it down to Tampa, Florida, and man, I'm like, okay, look, I don't have the most comfortable thing, but it's just constant. It's just this up and down motion all while you're driving. Again, it has 18-inch wheels on it. It creates a really tall side profile. There's a lot of give when you have only 18-inch wheels. I think it would do a lot better if it had 20-inch wheels on it, thinner profile, probably have a little less bounce going on. That's what I don't like. And the FX4 package, they say it has these Ranchero shocks. These shocks, I want to change them out to Bilsteins. My brother I think he had a 2013. He took those Ranchero shocks off, put Bilstein shocks on there. He said it didn't really make a big difference. It didn't make a world of difference. So anyway, if you do buy the Ford, I would urge you, get the lock-in differential, still an option. Get the lock-in differential. Just get the straight 4x4. And if you're going off-road, you can get a whole another package with skid plates on it. But don't get the FX4 package because they put some terrible shocks on there. It just kind of bang you up around. So don't get FX4. It looks cool to have FX4 versus 4x4. Just get 4x4. Get the lock-in differential as a side option. This is for 2022, by the way. You can do this with a 2022 truck if you go figure it on Ford's website. Select. If you're not doing heavy pulling, I think it's a 353 rear end. Depending on what an engine you get and everything, you get different rear ends if you get a 2.7 versus a 5.0 versus a 3.5 or even a Power Boost hybrid. So anyway, don't worry about getting the biggest rear end like a 410 rear end. Don't worry about doing all that. Your RPMs are going to be really high. You're going to be burning a whole bunch of gas. You can't pull really any more with it. Some people are like, well, it's going to pull better. Look. 3.5 can already pull our lot, even with the lowest, setting on there, the lowest differential ratio. You just don't need these great. If you're trying to get great gas mileage, I'm just trying to say, look, prices on gas going up. If you want, it costs me $100 right now to fill my truck up. I have the extended range 36-gallon tank. Look, it hurts every time to fill it up. Just what you want to do is get those RPMs down as low as you possibly can. Go with the smaller differential. Unless you're just doing a lot of pulling. If you're doing a lot of pulling, okay, go get the bigger differential. But if you're not doing all that pulling, you want to keep that differential probably small so you can get your RPMs down and your RPMs are not up high, burning too much gas. But anyway, GM again, just going back to GM. Never been a big fan of GM. Their interiors have been horrible. GM has had the worst interior as far back as 1989 all the way to 2020. Whatever I said, 2020. From 1989 to 2020, GM has had the worst interior I have ever seen. Just square box. Let's take, for instance, a 2019 or 2020 GM. This little small instrument screen right inside the instrument panel. I mean, come on a $60,000 truck. Come on, like this is just ridiculous. For 2022, GM is revamping the interior. I'm really excited of what they're doing. It's going to look a lot better. Finally, they may be catching up with the competition. So let's see what they do for 2022. I haven't seen one in person yet. I think they should be coming out in the next few weeks here or so. So anyway, that's pretty much where I'm standing right now. I also have a Ford E250. So E250 represents Econoline. E250, I don't know what it's called, Econoline now. I think it's called Ford Transit, but mine's a 2010. And if you get, I think from 2007-ish, 2009, Ford had, and I forget the code, I could look it up. When I bought this van, I knew that. Ford has a problem with the spark plugs blowing out of the engine. It's a great engine. Spark plugs, I mean, come on. I'm like, how in the world do you thread the cylinder head, maybe with like 3 threads, holding the spark plug in, and those 3 threads eventually would not be enough to contain the compression. Boom, cylinder flies out, and all of a sudden your truck sounds like an air compressor out there. I literally heard one do that in a parking lot. It was sitting there idling fine, and it went, and I'm like, Ford, are you serious? Like, I just cannot believe that you can design this engine with all these man hours and hundreds of people designing it, and not one person looked at this engine and said, look, we only got 2 or 3 threads holding this spark plug. This is just not a great idea. So anyway, started in 2010, they changed the cylinder head. There are more threads. I don't know how many threads there are. I haven't checked. I'm scared to check. And from that point onward, the 5.4 liter Triton engine actually is a really good engine. My van, this is a 2010 again, middle of 2010, I think. It has 170,000 miles. There's no ticking. There's no rattle. It's been a phenomenal engine. And it's being used for work. It does burn a little bit of oil, just a little bit, but it doesn't burn. Maybe like every 7,000 miles. I change the oil at about 7,000 miles, 6,000 miles, 7,000 miles. About the time when it's time to change the oil, I may have burned about half a quart. It's really within a tolerable level. You don't have to be checking it every other week or anything like that. It really doesn't burn any oil. And it's been a great engine. And I pull Bobcats, heavy equipment with this van. It has been great. Like, I would highly recommend. If you're going to go buy a work van, you didn't want to get the transit van, you didn't want to spend all that money, I would strongly consider the 2010 5.4 liter V8 in that Ford. It's a very reliable engine. It has also one of the best transmissions. I haven't done one thing to my van. It has 170,000 miles and it's being used for work. So it's been driven by other employees, people driving it hard, so on. So anyway, thought I'd throw it out there. I think the biggest problem I have with Ford is ruining that 5.0 Coyote. They should have just kept that engine phenomenally simple. There's just a diehard group of people out there who just want a simple, naturally aspirated, metal oil pan, no VCM on their engine. They don't care about no auto start and stop. And I'm going to talk about auto start and stop really quick while I'm thinking about it. It is true that when we come up to these red lights, we're just sitting here burning a lot of gas. I get that. Hundreds of cars sitting at a red light just burning a lot of gas. But the way to fix that problem is not with the car. The way to fix that problem is to fix the stupid red lights. I don't know how many times I go to cities and I come to a stop at the red light and there's no cross traffic. There's no cross traffic. So why in the world am I stopped if there's no cross traffic? So it just shows you how government is. Instead of taking our tax money and doing what they should do, updating the red lights, putting these sensors in the road so that there's these traffic sensing red lights so that they can sense traffic and change accordingly. Instead of using our tax money rightly, they instead mandate, I don't think it's a government mandate yet, but they pressure car companies to meet these higher emission standards. And so they incorporate all this complicated technology in cars. We have to use more money to go out and buy more expensive cars to try to handle a problem that really should be solved on the government level. That the auto start and stop needs to be solved at the red light level. If there's no cross traffic, these lights need to go straight to green and just stay green until there's cross traffic. There are a few lights that do that. There are some lights that do that, but there's nowhere near enough of them that do that. There's just too many lights. and there's no cross traffic, and the light turns red, and you're just sitting there for 4 minutes. I counted 4 to 5 minutes one time. There's a light in Athens coming out of Comar. That light sits red for probably almost, I bet that light sits red for 5 minutes, and there may not be any cross traffic. You're just sitting there. Use our tax money to get traffic sensing lights, get this problem fixed so that we're not out here idling for nothing. We don't have to be starting our car up and off, cutting our cars on and off like this, burning our starters up, probably going to mess up our starter ring gear on the back of our engine sooner than it should, and all the oil runs down to the oil pan. Once you crank it back up, it's got to come back up into the inner components of that engine. There's wear right there that comes on that car. The car is probably better off left idling. It's great for electric cars, hybrid cars, but when you're talking about the 3.5 that has a phaser issue, and that phaser lack of lubrication really shows up when that truck has sat for a little while and most of the oil has settled down, and then as soon as you crank it up, there's some rattle. I don't know exactly what's going on. I heard that they made an updated cam phaser that has like, somebody mentioned something about it has like a cage or some reinforcement or something around the spring. I don't know, and I don't know exactly what's going on with that. I just worry about that, shutting that engine on and off, on and off. So always disable auto start and stop. There's a little hack you can do. You can buy this 4-way flat adapter, and you can plug it into the hitch receiver, and it will think that a trailer's connected, and if a trailer's connected, it disables auto start and stop. So I haven't done that on my truck, but it will disable auto start and stop, because I noticed that when I pull my trailer, my truck doesn't shut off. So anyway, that's just a little hack. There's other ways you can probably go into the CAN, OBD, whatever Ford uses. You can probably program it, take it out, whatever. So anyway, I'm going to hit some more engines right now. I also drive a 2021 Ford Explorer. And I want to talk about this. I'll make a whole separate video for the Ford Explorer. It's using 2.3 liter engine in it. That engine so far, I've got 15,000 miles on mine. It's been a great engine. It has a metal oil pan. So I think Ford hit it out with park on 2.3. It's a whole nother engine. I'll talk about that later. But I really was just talking about pickup trucks. Which pickup truck do we buy today? The 2.7, when it first came out, they had some timing chain problems. I'm like, I don't know, do you want to buy a 2.7 in a Ford F-150? 3.5, now we got cam phaser issues. So kind of scared to buy a new 3.5. And then if you go to Power Boost Hybrid, still using 3.5. I always want to know exactly what kind of changes, because when generally most hybrids would use an Atkinson cycle engine. And I think it would be kind of complicated to explain it, but basically Atkinson cycle, I really think that really the simple way to say is I think they have less compression, or the compression comes in later in the cycle, whereas a normal engine, the compression like builds up gradually and gets really strong. Atkinson cycle has less compression and then suddenly becomes pretty strong at the end. It really just keeps, I think it's the exhaust valve or the intake valve. I think it's the intake valve. Leaves it open a little longer. So anyway, having a high compression 3.5 engine coupled to a hybrid, you know, I didn't think they would have done that. I thought that they would probably use 2.7 as the vehicular engine for the Power Boost Hybrid. That's just kind of what I was thinking, or maybe even 3.3 naturally aspirated. But you know, doing it with a high compression 3.5 engine, I don't know. I want to see the long-term reliability of Power Boost Hybrid. I think having the onboard generator is a great idea. So anyway, and then we go to GM. GM has, when you look at the Consumer Reports, GMs have just horrible reliability. In fact, their reliability is far worse than Ram and Ford. Right now, GM is considered the least reliable pickup truck right now. And it's way more than just engine problems. We got brake problems going on, infotainment problems. This is mostly for 2019, 2020, maybe even 2021. Just a whole host of issues. And I had a buddy of mine, he's like, we have a fleet of GMs. We just have nothing but problems. And then when we try to order parts, they're all back ordered. Can't get them because of the pandemic. Another guy told me his differential went out on his GM. So 2020 GM differential's gone. Like, I'm like, what? Your differential's gone? Like, what in the world's going on? The brakes are bad. This other guy had 2021 GM. He said his brakes are bad. To the dealer, they were like, brakes are back ordered. We can't get it. So I've been really scared to get a GM. To me, I think I like the GM on the outside better than the Ford. Ford's far better on the inside. Same way with Ram. I hate the Rams on the outside. Interior of a Ram was a lot better. Speaking of Ram, their seats are not comfortable. That's just me. A lot of people are going to say, oh, there's nothing wrong with these seats. No, Ford has the best seats, hands down. I don't care what anybody tell you. Ford by far has the best seats in the Ford Explorer and the Ford F-150. Those are the best seats, hands down. GM, a lot of people complain about the seats in GM. And then I was in the Ram. The seats in the Ram, like the lumbar support, it really doesn't push on your back much. It has a four-way lumbar, so it goes in and out and up and down. A two-way lumbar, I'm sorry. But it doesn't have the level of adjustability that the Ford has. It's just not, to me, it wasn't comfortable. If it's comfortable for you, then go for it. But I hate the exterior of a Ram. I just don't like the way Rams look on the outside. They just don't look like a real truck. And then I'm going to touch on the new 3.5 liter that's coming out in 2021, 2022, I think it's 2022. It's called a Toyota Tundra. So Toyota Tundra from really, I think it's 2005-ish. They really had the same body style all the way up to 2021, you know. So Toyota has had this hiatus of development in their trucks, and their trucks have just gotten really old school. I had a 1794 2019 Toyota. Man, that thing drove phenomenal. I love it. And I think the best thing I liked about it was this little, had a little switch next to the light, and you could literally tilt the lights up and down, up and down. It was great. It was if you were pulling a load, you could level your lights. So anyway, I think that's the only pickup truck that has that little lever that you can actually change the adjustment of your lights. The new Ford F-150 has I forget the name of the corner and headlights or something like that. So anyway, Toyota had that. It was a very smooth riding truck. Man, let me tell you something. That thing drank gas. I got under that truck a number of times trying to see if it was leaking gas. That truck drank gas like you would not believe. And another thing I hated about the 1794, this was a 2019-2020 model, is wait a minute, it was actually not a 2019. It was a 2018. That was right. Yeah, it was a 2018. What I hated about it is it used was it 5-speed or 6-speed? I think it's 5-speed with overdrive, so it'd be 6-speed. When you went up and down hills, it would always jump out of overdrive. Like, these hills were very mild, and it was constantly, and it was just, I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then when you put it in cruise control had no mercy on overdrive. Like, every time, the truck was so religious about maintaining an exact speed, it just slammed the gas down, and your truck sometimes would wind up in third gear, like cruise control. And those Toyotas have been bad about this. Ford, like my 2017 Ford F-150, when you set the cruise control, it stays in 10th gear. Like, they got it programmed where it stays in 10th gear longer. Even as it's coming up a hill, if you were normally driving and trying to maintain that speed, it would jump out of 10th, go to 9th. I think they say Ford has 2 overdrive gears, 9 and 10, or 8, 9, and 10. It would jump out of 10, drop to 9 if you were normally driving it. But when you put it in cruise control, it holds that 10th gear a little longer. And it makes a phenomenal difference in it just being smoother. You don't hear all this shifting. The Toyota just shifted way too many times. I'm going to tell you something. That 1794, beautiful truck. It had the brown leather interior. The seats were comfortable. The infotainment center, horrible. I think you go back 10 years, you could find an infotainment center better than that. I don't have no idea where that infotainment center came from. They had a JBL speaker sound system. Terrible sound. Terrible. The new the Ford that I have, the 2017 Ford, has the Sony system. It's not the best. They put Bang & Olufsen systems in there, which are much better than Sony. But anyway, the JBL in the Toyota was terrible. Probably the worst sound system I have ever experienced in any modern vehicle. That was it. It drank a ton of gas. Infotainment center was just complete garbage. Sound system was complete garbage. The transmission just hunted in and out of gears like you've never seen before. It was not that quiet. It was kind of loud. It was hoarse. Great looking truck. It just, for the money, it didn't match the features of any modern truck now. So anyway, they come out with a 3.5 liter twin turbo Toyota. I think it's called iForce Max or whatever. I think if you get the iForce, it's 3.5. The iForce Max is 3.5 with the hybrid system. Hybrids won't be coming out until later in this year. So anyway, the new Toyotas, the 2020, I think it's 2022 Toyotas, To me, they on the outside look hideous. Terrible design. Just the front end is just too much grill. Toyota, whoever's designing the exterior, Toyota's just doing a terrible job. Okay, I know that's subjective. Some people may love it. I just hate the way they look. And then in the inside, man, it's pretty. The color scheming is good and all that. But there's another guy, he's doing YouTube videos on that. The infotainment center seems lacking. It doesn't have a home mode on it. It doesn't have a split screen system on it. I don't know why they got rid of the split screen. You always need to see your radio and your navigation, your map, your radio, maybe phone connectivity. The fact that they didn't put a split screen system on the Toyota is very disappointing. I don't know that I consider the Toyota right now. Some people are saying that they're starting having some wastegate turbo issues, and somebody even showed a cab off procedure. Somebody had taken the whole cab off their Tundra. And I'm like, okay, here we go again. Winding it back to the 6.4 liter days where everything was a cab off procedure. It's intimidating. And a lot of people are like, oh, it ain't a big deal. Take the cab off. Just let them do some harnesses, lift the cab off. You got to have special equipment. You got to have a special shop. It's not something that your little local guy's going to be able to do, and people are just going to charge more because they have to take the cab off. So anyway, right now I'm not sold on the new Tundra. It's very, very expensive. They're coming out with a capstone edition. It's going to be way up into $80,000. I mean, it's not a cheap vehicle. It's hard to know what to buy today, and I know I haven't spoken much about Ram. I just can't get to buy it past the way Ram looks. Ram just looks ugly. But if you can get past the Ram is considered maybe about as reliable as the Ford right now. And that's a huge feat for Ram, because Ram has always been unreliable. They've always had bad transmissions. And then Mercedes got their foot in the door. They have co-developed some of the parts. The reliability of a Ram is a little better today. But to me, it seemed like there's inconsistent engineering with Rams. I know some people will say, oh, my Ram has been the best. And I know some people who say, oh, my Ram broke. So they don't have this consistency of quality. If you like a Ram, go with a Ram. I think Rams may be great now. Don't get that hybrid, mild hybrid system. I don't think it does you any good at all. It's belt driven. Like, come on, it doesn't even compare with the Power Boost hybrid. Go get a Ram if you want to go to a Ram. Right now, I'll tell you what I'm leaning toward. I'm leaning in getting an F-250 with a 7.3 liter Godzilla, or I'm going to get the Power Boost hybrid. I just don't know any other way to go, and I'm hoping that they'll fix this phaser problem. It's such a shame that they have this phaser problem with the 3.5. 3.5 is phenomenal engine. I honestly believe out of all the 150 trucks, the 3.5 is the best engine ever produced. And I know Toyota also produces this 3.5. When I say the best engine produced, I'm not saying most reliable engine. I'm just talking about when it comes to weight, power. That engine has power like you would not believe. It has the 3.5 in the 2020 Ford has pretty much the same power as the 7.3 had, the diesel 7.3 had back in 2002. It's about the same power. My dad has a 2002 7.3. Man, my dad has only like 70,000 miles on that truck. That truck's worth a lot today. And I've driven his truck. His truck cannot pull a load no better than that 3.5. That 3.5 can pull a Bobcat that's 7,000 pounds just like that 7.3 can. Now, the 7.3 can pull that Bobcat for 400,000 miles without no problem. Try pulling a Bobcat with that 3.5 for 400,000 miles. I bet we're already talking about cam phaser problems without pulling any load. I don't think it'll last beyond 100,000 miles max pulling something that heavy. So, but the 3.5, when I say it's one of the best engines, it's smooth, it's quiet, it has amazing power, and the fuel economy is really not that bad. I mean, you can get 19, 20 on that 3.5. Ford says all up into 23. You're not going to get 23 miles per gallon on that 3.5. You're going to get about 20. You might get 21 if you're lucky. I think if you put non-ethanol fuel in there, it may do better. I'm not a big fan of putting high test fuel inside 3.5. I've tried it both ways. I put 87 in it, put 93. 93 doesn't make any difference. What does make a difference is when you put non-ethanol fuel in there. That does seem to make a difference. I drove it to Florida. I got about 22 miles to the gallon on that 3.5 going to Florida. Now, this is a drop in elevation. You always get great gas mileage going to Florida. When I came out to Florida, I ended up getting non-ethanol fuel at Buc-ee's down there in Daytona. I don't think that quality of fuel was as good as the fuel I went down there with. When I went down there, I got non-ethanol fuel at, guess where? Kroger. I really think Kroger has some of the best non-ethanol fuel. I got it at Buc-ee's on my way back. I was back down to 19. Like it didn't seem like it made a big difference. Granted, I was doing almost, I won't say how fast I was going. Cops might come and get me, but I was way over the speed limit. And when you get over 68 miles an hour on 3.5, gas mileage just goes down. Keep it below 65. You got great gas mileage on 3.5. I gotta wrap this video up. It's getting to be pretty long. I'll come back. I want to do a video on the Ford Explorer. The Ford Explorer is one bad vehicle. I highly recommend it. Don't buy a Kia Telluride. Get a Ford Explorer. I'll let you know later. You guys have a great night. Hit subscribe. I'm just getting started on YouTube. If you subscribe, you really help me out. I'll keep producing content. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.